Good morning, everyone. Before we get into the reason why we are here today, another tough day on the numbers front as it relates to COVID. Just about 2,200 new positive cases, 13, sadly, losses of life, over 1,300 in our hospitals. The big counties, over 200 cases today, are the ones that we've been talking about of late: Essex, Bergen, and Passaic. Those are 200 or more each, and then 150 or more each, Hudson and Middlesex. So we continue to be in the fight. As I alluded to yesterday, we're working on making sure that we've got a right balance between strategic scalpel-like actions and some broader actions that we will almost certainly take sooner than later. So again, good morning, everybody. On Tuesday, the people of New Jersey voted overwhelmingly, by the way, about a 2-to-1 margin, to erase our state's broken marijuana laws and to legalize adult use marijuana. I was proud to cast my own vote in favor of this measure, joining every member of my family and joining millions of my fellow New Jerseyans. And I thank everyone who voted in support of this amendment. In fact, through your votes, marijuana legalization passed with a greater margin here in New Jersey than in any other state where it has been on the ballot. We now join the growing number of states that have come to the rightful conclusion that our marijuana laws had done more harm than good, had ruined more futures than they had helped, and hurt many communities by saddling black and brown people, predominantly young men, with an arrest and a host of collateral consequences for non-violent offenses. And in many cases, sadly, those consequences were carried for the rest of their lives and are being carried. Our taxpayers saw $150 million of their tax dollars go every year just to processing marijuana arrests. And those arrests fell disproportionately along racial lines, despite, by the way, similar rates of marijuana usage. Black New Jerseyans were 3 times as likely to be arrested for possession than their white peers. Now, law enforcement will be able to focus their resources and time on more serious and violent crimes. As I have said repeatedly, both while I sought this office and while I have held it, the legalization of adult use marijuana is a matter of social justice, economic justice, and racial justice. It is a matter of criminal justice reform. It is a matter of common sense. Each of these ideals, social justice, economic justice, racial justice, criminal justice reform, and common sense, prevailed at the ballot box on Tuesday. But now that this amendment is passed, the work begins to ensure that it is implemented fairly, justly, and swiftly. I look forward to continuing our work with the legislature to pass enabling legislation that will set up the necessary regulatory framework for adult use marijuana. And today, I am incredibly proud to announce my choices to lead the Cannabis Regulatory Commission that will oversee both the adult use as well as medical marijuana sectors. To serve as the Commission's chair, I am proud to appoint Dianna Huenu. For the past year and a half, Dianna has served on my staff as Associate Counsel and Senior Policy Advisor. She has stood front and center on multiple issues of social justice, including historic expungement legislation, criminal justice reform, and reforming the culture of law enforcement. I honestly don't think New Jersey would be as far advanced as we are today without her efforts. Prior to joining my staff, Dianna was working on these same types of issues, including marijuana legalization, as policy counsel with the American Civil Liberties Union of New Jersey. Wherever she has worked, she built a wellspring of trust throughout numerous communities, and in this new role, she will be called upon to continue doing just that. Dianna's story is also the New Jersey story. She is the daughter of immigrants and the first person, Dianna, I believe, on both sides of your family to be born in the United States. She attended to both her undergraduate and law studies at the University of North Carolina, though we will not hold her Chapel Hill fandom against her. Private comment there. Her commitment to doing what is right and to leaving no one behind has powered our criminal justice reform agenda, and I am immensely proud that she will be continuing that commitment. Dianna is quite simply the right person at the right time to lead our state's effort to create a marketplace for recreational marijuana that is equitable, fair, and inclusive of all communities. I know, and I'm going to give them a wave, Dianna's family is watching online and with great pride. In fact, some of them from across the Atlantic Ocean. I share their pride with them, as Dianna is indeed a true rock star. And the guy to her left, to serve as the Commission's Executive Director, I am proud to appoint Jeff Brown. Jeff currently serves as Assistant Commissioner of Health in charge of the state's Division of Medicinal Marijuana, a post he has held since March of 2018. When he joined our administration, Jeff was already a recognized leader in health policy through his work with both the Hospital Alliance of New Jersey and the New Jersey Healthcare Quality Institute. And over the past 32 months, he has been instrumental in overseeing the complete overhaul and expansion of our medical marijuana program. When Jeff took over, we had just begun our work to turn our state's program from one that the prior administration had custom built to be restrictive and inaccessible to what it is today, a program that offers hope and relief to tens of thousands of New Jerseyans. Under Jeff's leadership, our program has grown from 17,000 to 95,000 patients, and we've enrolled more than 2,500 new caregivers. Over 700 new physicians have entered the program, and 7 new dispensaries have opened, increasing from 5 to 12, with several more on the way. And I have to say that much of this progress was enabled through the Huenu Compassionate Use Medical Cannabis Act, which we worked with the legislature to pass last year, and which I proudly signed. And God rest the soul of that little precious little guy, Jake Honig, and his family, who I would bet are watching us right now. When COVID hit in March, Jeff jumped in to help at DOH and oversaw our field hospital in Atlantic City and served on the Commissioner's testing task force, in addition to his duties overseeing medical marijuana. Jeff's experience in the successful expansion of our program and in working with patients, advocacy groups, and industry throughout that process will be critical as we set up our new legal adult use marketplace and continue to maintain a robust medical marijuana program. Legalization is a long time coming, I know. This is something that many of us had hoped that we could have already done through the legislative process. And many of our legislative partners have worked tremendously hard. Most notably, I want to give a shout out to the guy with whom I had the very first conversation about this, Senate Judiciary Chairman Nick Scuteri. But the votes of the people themselves are confirmation that we are on the right side of this issue. Last March, when the effort to legalize adult use marijuana hit a roadblock, I said the following, I'm going to quote myself: "History is rarely made at the very first attempt. History is often a bumpy road of fits and starts, of progress and setbacks, but eventually barriers do fall to those who are committed to breaking them down." And today, the barrier of our failed marijuana laws that has kept so many of our residents from moving forward and prevented our economy from growing and expanding in a truly inclusive way is about to fall. With Dianna and Jeff leading the way, I know we will be successful in not just creating the marketplace that works for New Jersey, but one that will be a model for other states to follow. I thank them for all they have done in building the foundation upon which we now work. And it gives me tremendous pleasure to introduce the chair of the Cannabis Regulatory Commission, Dianna Huenu. Dianna?
Thank you, Governor. It is truly an honor to continue serving the state of New Jersey in this new role. And I, too, was incredibly proud to join in this historic voting effort. Casting my vote on public question number 1 was truly an emotional moment for me. I took stock of the years spent fighting for that very moment. I reflected on all the people I met along the way, who inspired me to keep demanding that racial justice remain at the heart of the legalization movement, and the people whose lives were turned upside down by laws rooted in deliberate attempts to criminalize Black and brown communities. Together, we fought for the day when New Jersey would move away from failed prohibition policies that prevented people from getting medicine, getting a job, getting an education, or getting housing. And finally, that day has come. But as happy as I am about the results of the vote, I would be remiss if I didn't remind us all that this is just the first step. Now that we have put ourselves on the right path, we must ensure that the next steps we take right the wrongs of the past. My vision for the Cannabis Regulatory Commission is one that I know Governor Murphy and Jeff both share. It is one that prioritizes equity and integrity, twin values, in its approach to regulating the medicinal and personal use cannabis markets. I intentionally describe these as twin values because I believe you cannot have one without the other. For a cannabis industry to have integrity, it must be equitable. It must protect patient access, reflect the diversity of the state, and reinvest revenues into the communities most harmed by prohibition. From promoting inclusion among license and permit holders to making affirmative investments in the future of our communities of color, New Jersey is poised to mark its position as a leader in advancing racial and social justice. The opportunities for equity that lay ahead are limitless, and I look forward to seizing them for the benefit of New Jersey's communities disproportionately harmed by past policies. So, Governor Murphy, thank you for this opportunity to implement the vision that we and the people of the Garden State all share. And Jeff, I'm very excited to continue working alongside you as we bring equity and integrity to life for our fellow New Jerseyans. Thank you.
Jeff and I are applauding. Thank you, Dianna. Either before we take questions or after, I think we can spread ourselves 6 feet apart over here and take a team shot without our mask before we break today, so let's do that. Thank you so much, Dianna, for not just those incredibly on-point comments, but for your leadership on this issue for so long and for all that you will do in the years ahead. Please help me welcome the new Executive Director of the Cannabis Regulatory Commission, Jeff Brown.
Good morning, and thank you, Governor, and congrats, Dianna. This appointment is a tremendous honor and a tremendous task, one that I don't take lightly. When I became Assistant Commissioner of the Division of Medicinal Marijuana in March of 2018, I was coming off of a year spent fighting, among many priorities, to protect the Affordable Care Act from legislative attacks. It was a personal fight for me because I have Crohn's disease, and the idea of not being able to get the medication that keeps me in remission and healthy solely because I had a pre-existing condition was terrifying. So when I became Assistant Commissioner and heard from cancer patients who struggled to access our medical cannabis dispensaries, from mothers who were driving across the state to get the medication they needed for their kids with severe seizure disorder, people with terminal illness who were forced to go back to the doctor every 3 months just to confirm that they were still dying, I felt that same fear from them, and it was personal to me. That's why we've pursued aggressive changes at the Division of Medicinal Marijuana. We've added new conditions that can be treated with medical cannabis, new dispensaries, new products, and have made it dramatically easier to be a patient in New Jersey. Because of our reforms, we will surpass 100,000 patients this month. And our work is not even close to being done. We need to continue to expand the market. We need to continue to add new products, and we need to continue to break down barriers for patients and their loved ones. Which is why I assure you, Governor and Dianna, that even in this new role, I will continue to fight to ensure that our medical cannabis patients have access and continue to fight to make our program better. But we are also called to turn to an equally important task. As we legalize cannabis for personal use in the great state of New Jersey, the Garden State, We must do so in a way that acknowledges and provides opportunities for people and communities that have paid a higher price in the failed war on drugs. The choices we make in the early days of the Commission will set the stage for years and decades to come. And if social justice and racial justice is not at the core of what we do, of every decision we make, then we are not doing our job. Where patient access has been my #1 priority, now I and the whole Commission, once appointed, must also look to do whatever we can to right the wrongs that have come before as we establish this new legal cannabis marketplace. And we must ensure that as we establish it, it is established as safely, equitably, and fairly as possible. This will take time. We're not going to do this overnight, but I'm confident that we can do it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Well said, man. I think we'll take a few questions and then we'll do the team shot. Is that okay with you all? Anybody? Hey, Brian. Hold on, we'll get a mic here for you.
Sorry, thank you. This whole issue of social justice and reinvesting in the community, I'd like to hear from both you and the new chairwoman as to what do you mean by reinvesting in the community? Does that mean setting up small businesses, minority businesses who are dispensary outlets? How do we see the balance once the legislation is passed, of course, and we all know that it's that close. How do we see the balance between big corporate moves into New Jersey and the little guy that would bring some sort of justice?
All good questions. I'll give you my thoughts, and Dianna, you should weigh in as well. I think a lot of this is to be determined, in fairness, in terms of the specifics. I don't want to jump the gun on the legislation. We're working quite well with the legislature on this. And by the way, we have been on this from moment one. We all tried to get this passed legislatively and came very close. It did not get there, but we've worked together on both the referendum and currently on legislation. But it does mean equity. We just had a little huddle backstage, and I said job #1, and I think we're in violent agreement, is equity here. And equity will evidence itself in a whole range of different ways. Who gets the licenses, where they're located. To your question, a balance between folks who are already in this industry with those who are in the small business and startup community, which we value so much in this state, which, by the way, I think generates overall 60% of our employment. This notion of equity will be evidenced, I think, in a number of ways throughout this as it takes hold. Dianna, do you want to add anything to that?
Thank you for the question. So yes, I would echo what the governor has said. This really is about not just looking at how can we promote representation and inclusion within the cannabis markets, balancing between folks who have access to the large corporations to the smaller businesses, but it's also about making sure that the communities that have been harmed are restored, and it's not just about the arrests that have been made and the thousands that are made each year. It's about everything, right? So making sure that we're providing economic opportunities, whether it be directly related to cannabis or not, equitable education, and the way we talk about cannabis needs to be equitable as well. So all of these options are on the table. Jeff and I will be looking to other states to learn from their lessons and see what good things are happening elsewhere that we can bring here to New Jersey, how we can avoid any pitfalls that they've experienced, and really create something beautiful and wonderful for our New Jerseyans.
I'd make two other quick points. We said backstage, listen, am I excited about a new impulse in the economy? About the potential for revenues for the state, about job creation, you betcha. But if we said this backstage, if we get one thing right, it's got to be equity. And secondly, I haven't said this today, but I've said this many times before, in as much as these injustices have existed, in another respect, I'm glad we're not the first state to do this, because we have a roadmap before us of what's worked, what hasn't worked across now. I think we're the 11th plus the District of Columbia, 11th or 12th, Jeff? And we're going to be able to, we had this very conversation backstage as well to learn from their experiences. Dustin, hold on one sec.
Thanks.
Good morning.
The Regulatory Commission was established last year, and it seems that some of this work could have been done since then, unless I'm mistaken. So can you just discuss the wait to make this appointment? What is the administration going to do between now and when marijuana is actually legal and regulated to address the factors in enforcement leading to the racial inequities, or will they persist as they have been for years, including since you've taken office? And is there a possibility of minorities who've been on the short end of these inequities getting not only priority, but some sort of financial assistance to get into the business so they can compete with larger companies likely to enter? Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this is subject to the legislation, so I don't want to jump the gun. I mean, our energies, once we determined collectively that it couldn't be passed legislatively, as much as that was with a heavy heart, we put all of our energies in getting it passed on the ballot box. So the election was Tuesday, today's Friday. We've waited a whopping 3 days to name the chair and the executive director. And so I think we're off to the races here, and we'll continue to. There are other board seats to appoint, which we will do sooner than later, and this will take hold. I've said this yesterday in our press conference, which was COVID related. The Attorney General's already made a statement about how he views the mindset around enforcement, et cetera. And the key word for me was discretion. And I would just reiterate that using discretion is, I hope, up and down the state, the watchword that is used in terms of enforcement. And again, we'll know a lot more once a bill is agreed upon, once it comes to my desk, once it's signed, in terms of exactly how the world looks between now and go date. And let's defer on that until we've got the legislation. Thank you. Ma'am, do you have any? Yeah. That's, there you go.
I do have a question. I kind of have a follow-up to that, because the CRC was also meant to oversee the medical marijuana program, which
Correct.
could have been done in January. Instead, it stayed with the Department of Health. Department of Health had an unprecedented crisis with the coronavirus this year. If that work had been done earlier, could this have maybe made things a bit easier for people over at the Department of Health? And
I think the answer is emphatically no. We were focused on getting this passed at the ballot box, but please.
Okay. And then I have a separate question just about Clifton Schools today. One of the largest districts in the state has decided to close through January, citing spike in community cases. This kind of differs from specific shortcomings that schools have cited about HVAC issues. Is a surge in community spread an acceptable reason for ending in-person classes for months? And if so, how could a similar statewide surge impact schools and their ability to...
Which district? I missed the district.
Clifton.
Clifton? Mm-hmm. Okay. Listen, it's the same answer I would have given you before. We review through our Department of Education with a big input from the Department of Health, where Jeff resides. We put a big, we deal with these districts one district at a time. We did that when they closed. We're doing it when they reopened 2 months ago. And they consult with us at every step of the way when they make decisions like that. So I don't have a specific insight into Clifton. I did mention yesterday that we've got 30-odd instances of in-school transmission impacting over 100 individuals. We take every one of those cases deadly seriously, but that's well within any expectation of where we expected to be. Let there be no doubt, as a general matter, this virus has not gone away, as we predicted it would not, and notwithstanding great work on behalf of millions of New Jerseyans, we're still in the fight. And we have got to fight back against COVID fatigue, which is understandable, which is real, and we have to do collectively everything we can in our power to fight back against that. Do you have something, sir? Yep, come on down. One sec. Matt's coming over to you. Matt Stanishi, by the way, still trying to figure out if he got elected in Greenbrook to Township Committee. We'll hope to get the word this weekend for that, Matt. We have you in our prayers. Hello.
Good morning, Governor. Will you be looking to commute sentences or issue pardons for people convicted of low-level marijuana offenses? And if not, how is that consistent with saying legalization is a matter of social justice? And then the second one off topic, what concerns do you have about the increasing COVID-19 cases at Fort Dix Federal Prison?
On the former, I've said everything I'm going to say. The Attorney General made his statement. We're going to work on the legislation. When we get that, hopefully to my desk sooner than later, and God willing, it'll get signed, we'll have a lot more guidance as to where the world is headed. I've got no specific insights on Fort Dix. But Mahan, I'd like to get back on that question. The Department of Health, I know, is involved. The local health authorities are involved. It's concerning when you get vulnerable populations. It's why it underpins why we've taken a lot of the steps we've taken to responsibly reduce prison population because of public health, most importantly, but to do it responsibly. And knock on wood, that's our mantra, and that's what we've been able to do. Before I go to anyone else who's not asked, we good? Real quick, 1, 2, sir, go. Are you together? I apologize. Okay.
I apologize for my delay. On topic, if you have answered this, I apologize. The step being taken today, how important is that in terms of the commission? And also off topic, on the election, any comments about the president's allegations that there's been voter fraud, especially as the head of the Governors Association, Democrat Governors Association? Yeah,
so I would say 2 things. One is that this is a big day. So we have taken 2 important steps. Number 1, in Dianna's case, someone who exudes equity in the struggle to get there, who is studied deeply in not just social justice generally, but specifically on cannabis, whether it was at the ACLU or in our front office. Jeff has overseen our medical marijuana operations for 32 months. He's done a brilliant job. He said something which I didn't say, including expanding conditions, health conditions that allow you to be eligible to participate in the program, destigmatizing the medical community's engagement. These are 2 rock stars. We could not have 2 better people as our first 2 appointments, and I think it's a big step in that respect. Secondly, listen, I'm going to try to contain myself, but that was, I think, the worst set of remarks ever delivered by an American president last night. It's just hard to put it any other way. Let's count the votes. And by the way, he could still win this. If I were in his shoes, I would let this play out because you just never know. It quite obviously, the past 48 hours, as these mail-in ballots, as the urban communities have been counted, it has shifted the needle dramatically toward Vice President Biden. But let's count all the votes. That's what we're going to do in New Jersey. Call balls and strikes. And then when we've counted all the votes, decisions are made as to whether it's a continuation of the current administration or a new administration that will come into effect in January. And I plead with responsible leaders across the spectrum, but especially in the Republican Party, to stand up. This is not the first time the president, by the way, has shown this impulse. In 2016, I was reminded this morning in a debate with Hillary Clinton, he refused to say that he would abide by the results of the election. Turns out he won the election, but he set up a fraudulent voting commission. You may remember this. It's distant past, which came to literally no conclusion about any evidence of fraud. But having said that, we are where we are today. We need responsible leadership to stand up once the votes are counted and the decision is obvious. If it is not his victory and it is Vice President Biden's victory, we need to move on and accept that decision. And I plead with leadership on the Republican side of the aisle. I saw John Bramnick say some responsible words, I think, earlier today. We need more of that. I applaud him for saying that. We need more of that. And again, let's count every single vote. Thank you. Brian, you have one more, and then we're going to go. Hold on one second.
For you, Governor, in the legislation that's coming down the pike, do you want any designation of money to social justice issues, to minority communities? And if I can ask Jeff, once that passes, what kind of timetable are you looking at to get all the regulatory structure in place?
Yeah, so don't be mad at me. Let's let the legislation continue to get resolved, and I think we're very close. Let's get that over the goal line, get it to my desk to sign. If it's okay with you, Jeff, we're going to defer on that in terms of timing, because timing will be a part of that. I was asked this question yesterday. God willing, within a year, you're able to have a retail experience, and potentially sooner, and then potentially as well, and Jeff, you may want to come up on this topic specifically if I could ask you to. In the medical dispensary side, only if Jeff and Dianna are convinced that there's sufficient supply such that we don't eat into what is there for the medical patients, there's a potential for some retail activity, through the medical dispensaries. Is that fair, Jeff? Do you want to just real quick color on that.
Yeah, it's critical to ensure that our current dispensaries have enough product to serve the patient population. As I mentioned, we're expanding. We're going to hit 100,000 patients in the next month, and so we have a current industry. We need to keep expanding the medical industry, and then we need to plan for this new legal cannabis industry. And as the governor said, a lot of that's going to be sorted out in the legislation, and we need to see where that falls before we can start talking about any sort of expectations.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Dianna. Congratulations to each of you. Thank you all for being with us. Why don't we come over and do a socially distant team shot, if that's okay? And again, thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.